Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for August 21st through August 27th of 2023. My name is Cam White. If you don't know me already, make sure you like this video if you're liking the content. Make sure you subscribe if you want to keep up to date with all of the current astrological transits that are going on and how to navigate them. Anyway, this week, we have actually a lot going on this week. When I was making the horoscope, I was like, oh, there's not that much going on. These next 2 weeks actually have quite a bit of stuff. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. Actually, before that, I wanted to comment on, I moved again. Long story short, the astrology of it's actually really interesting. I just entered a 4th house year in annual perfections. Last year, I was in a 3rd house year, but Saturn was my time lord, and Saturn moved into my 4th house in March. So, you know, I was at the old place, and I was at the hotel, then I was at that last house, and now I should be here for the next long time, you know, at least a year, because that's how long the lease is. I'm very happy with it. I will be giving you guys a life update here soon. I just got a few more things going on. But I want to do a live stream and just talk to you guys. I feel like I haven't done a life update in a very long time. So I want to do a live stream on YouTube. It's been a long time since I've done that, just to connect more with you guys. But anyway, the other thing I want to mention is the lighting is so much better. At the other place, I could only have one key light. And I had to have it at this like extreme angle because how the room was set up. I couldn't get 2 lights and I couldn't get them really in front of me. So the lighting is a lot better. I know Parker appreciates it. So I just wanted to make that comment. But let's go ahead and talk about the week. So we're starting Monday off with just the moon being in Libra, conjoining the South Node and eventually ingressing into Scorpio. So these moon South Node transits have been interesting to me. I believe this is like the second one that we've got. As the moon's in Libra, right? We want everything in balance. We want everything in order. We want everything, you know, all within harmony, right? But as it conjoins the South Node, there's a level of like, this is the thing I've been saying this whole time is like the South Node in Libra is like peace was never an option. And, you know, if I can be honest with you guys, when I do these weeklies, the fun thing about it for me is, while I sit here and I might talk as if like, oh, like this is what you've got to do, this is what's going on, as if I'm not doing it too, it feels a lot like I'm telling myself what I need to do. And I mean, you might look at that as selfish, and maybe there is a little bit of selfishness there, but it's so like, God, this helps me through my, like I do these weeklies for myself. And the reason, like if I'm only doing it because other people want me to do it, then I'm not going to be motivated to do it. I got to want to do it. And the reason I'm even going on this rant is like, I'm at a point in my life right now where I have to get things done and I need to do things. And there's an inner urge in me that once this is taken care of, then I can take care of this other thing. Once that's in order, you know, then I'll be able to handle this. And it's just not happening. It's not happening. And my personal challenge right now is like, you know, there was a comment on one of my last weeklies that I genuinely appreciated. Whoever that was, I appreciate that comment. It was like, oh, if this starts turning Christian, then maybe I don't want to watch it. And I'm not here to, you know, like just be like, oh, give yourselves up to Jesus or God or whatever. But one thing that does help me, and again, I'm not trying to make this a whole Christian channel. I'm just trying to be honest with you guys about my own journey. And maybe in my own journey, there's things about that you can relate to. But there's a fucking prayer. I got to remember how it goes. It's like, God, help me to accept the things that I cannot change and change the things I can't accept, or something along those lines. And I'm bringing this up because the moon conjoining the South Node is just like, at least the moon conjoining the South Node in Libra is not everything is going to be in balance. You are not going to have all of your ducks in a row in order to pursue the things that you need to pursue and the things that you need to get done. We have all of these excuses and we have all these things that we just wish. It's like, oh, well, you know, once that's taken care of in my life, then I'll be able to do this. And it's just not happening. And I just believe when the moon conjoins the South Node in Libra, and we're going to be having this for the next year and a half until we get to the very, very end of 2024, there's a level of like, you're not going to be ready. You're never going to be ready. When I was in all of my personal development stuff, one of my favorite things that my team would always say is like, now is good. And this is kind of my frustration. I'm going off on a lot of tangents here, but just bear with me. this is why I have sort of a discrepancy and somewhat of a different opinion about electional astrology. Because everyone with electional astrology, it's super easy to be like overthinking it and overcalculating it. But the power of the term "now is good." Do it now. Or no fear. That's KNOW. No fear and do it anyway. Now is good. You're not going to have everything that you need to get started. You're not going to have the right mindset or the right thing, but you just have to do it. And I look at the moon conjoining the South Node as surrendering to that. And what I've learned in my own spiritual journey, in my own in practicing astrology, is it's all about traveling the path of least resistance. If you have to, and the way I look at it is it's a push-pull door. So let's say you're walking into a business or you're walking into a door, and that door requires you to pull it open in order to get in. Well, if you're just trying to push it open, you're never going to get through. And you're going to exert all this energy and force, and it's just not going to happen. You have to travel the path of least resistance. And I believe when the moon conjoins the South Node on Monday, there's a level of like surrendering to that of, hey, not everything in my life is going to be perfect or well balanced or in order, but, or I should say, however, that cannot dissuade me from continuing on the thing that I need to do, prioritizing the things that I need to prioritize. And then the moon ingresses into Scorpio on Monday. And what I love about the moon in Scorpio now is now that the South Node's not there, there's not this resentment or this kind of like, this uncomfortability or this, it's what I enjoy about the moon in Scorpio is motivation and fuel. I've talked a lot about Alex Hormozi on my channel, who I if you're not like a business owner, because Alex Hormozi's content's mostly about like business, you could still get so much out of his content. And he talks a lot about it's like you got to use whatever fuel you can. And like he talked about like, oh, like anger is my fuel, and you know, resentment was my fuel to do things. And I relate so much to that as a young man. You know, just young men deal with so much with anger, and people don't like to talk about that. But I look at the moon in Scorpio as like emotions can be energy, emotions can be fuel, and this is moon in Scorpio stuff. This is darker. This is deep resentment. This is pain. This is guilt. This is shame. You know, shame is good in society. Like it keeps you in check. And when the moon goes into Scorpio, there's a level of harnessing those emotions. It's like the moon conjoins the South Node in Libra. Hey, not everything's going to be in perfect working balance. Not everything is going to be in order. But what are you going to do about it anyway? And then the moon goes into Scorpio where it's like that frustration or that pain of like, hey, everything around me, maybe I want to change everything around me. Maybe there's, you know, things in your life that you want to change, but maybe you're just lacking that motivation or that energy. And I think Monday, when the moon goes into Scorpio, it's an excellent time to tap into the anger, to tap into the frustration, to tap into the part of yourself that holds on and latches onto things, and knowing that you can use that for something different. You don't have to hold on to the past, but you can use those emotions from the past in order to motivate you to make changes for the future. And so then we go into Tuesday, and on Tuesday, the moon, while it's in Scorpio, is going to make a trine to Saturn. It's going to make a square to Venus, and it's going to go opposite Jupiter. The other highlights that we have going on Tuesday is Venus, being retrograde, will make a square to Jupiter, and Mars will go opposite Neptune. There's a lot of frustration in Tuesday, but it's one of those things where it's not about like, again, traveling the path of least resistance versus like forcing things is like, you got to really understand the difference here. Traveling the path of least resistance looks like not doing things that, like, again, it's pushing a door open that's supposed to be pulled open. But the energy on Tuesday is like, you've got to make things happen. And for example, when, let's say you have a performance, let's say you're an artist, or let's say if you can at least just play along with that idea that you're an artist, you're a performer. Let's say an hour before set, one of your backdrops or something goes wrong. Creating a solution to that, you're probably not going to be able to get it completely fixed 100% before you go on stage. But there's a level of, hey, I have to put all of my will and intention into getting this as close to being fixed as possible in order for the show to go on. And so when the moon is in Scorpio making that trine to Saturn, I think there's a level of like, but this is what I love about Saturn and Pisces is, again, if Saturn is about discipline and maturity, and Saturn is about, long-term things, and Saturn is about old age, and Saturn is about responsibility, but also these limitations. Pisces is the inward expression, the more yin expression of like belief, of faith, of hope. And there's some sort of a wall there for people. But the other side of that is, well, you need to be more disciplined in this area. And I believe as the moon makes that trine to Saturn, there's a level of like, the moon in Scorpio is like, it's not about just completely being silent and meditating all the time. Like sometimes it's about actually being in the body, being in your emotions, and pursuing something. Like, this is what I hate about the term manifestation, is it's just kind of like, if you just sit there, not everything's going to come to you. Like you do actually have to go out and put yourself in a way in which opportunities will come to you. Like if you live in Antarctica, opportunities are not going to come to you, if that makes sense, right? It doesn't matter how much you go and pursue them. Maybe you do have to go out on your own and you go find a polar bear to eat, or you go find, a whale to kill and go and eat. I'm sure a single person probably couldn't kill a whale, but I think you guys get the point. But then on Tuesday, the moon will make a trine to Saturn. So there's a level of connecting with like, okay, I understand that maybe emotionally investing in, again, the negative emotions as fuel to help me be more disciplined and mature in my spiritual path. Like that's kind of the relevant thing on Tuesday. And then afterwards, the moon will make a square to Venus. It's not going to look perfect, but the show must go on. And I look at the moon squaring Venus as like, hey, sometimes you do have to get down and dirty. Like, this is what I appreciate anyone who's willing to get their hands dirty with stuff, like actually physically dirty. Whether that's like you're a plumber and you got to literally deal with like human fecal matter and all that gross shit. It's not going to look pretty, and it may not be fun or what you want. And I look at the moon squaring Venus as that is like, this isn't fun. This isn't what I want. I don't like this. There's an uncomfortability there. But then the moon goes opposite Jupiter. And what's interesting about Tuesdays is the moon goes opposite Jupiter. That tells a story of kind of like, hey, if you just dig deep down enough, like you'll find the buried treasure. Like the moon opposite Jupiter as well. Again, like an opposition is going to be along the lines of like two parties disagreeing, like seeing literally at odds with one another. And so the moon in Scorpio is kind of like, I'm uncomfortable. I have this pain. And then Jupiter in Taurus is like, hey, but like, if you want X, Y, and Z, again, what I love about Jupiter and Taurus is if it's all about faith, if it's all about discipline, discipline, if it's about faith, hope, abundance, belief, and it's in Taurus, we're talking about long-term value. We're talking about physical, tangible goods. That moon opposite Jupiter is a level of kind of like, sometimes in order to get to those goods, you have to go down deep and do things that maybe you don't want to do. Like for example, like I'm thinking of like oil, for example. Like if you work out in the oil fields, that's dirty work. That doesn't make you feel good, but the oil people get paid good money. That's how I look at the moon opposite Jupiter. If you're willing to get uncomfortable and get a little bit dirty, the reward is there for you. But then also on Tuesday, Venus will be retrograde, making a square to Jupiter. And this is now our second time with Venus making a square to Jupiter, but this time it's retrograde. Now that Venus is retrograde, and again, we're still in this reevaluation process. We're still letting go of certain desires. I think as it squares Jupiter, there's a level of like, did I even want that in the first place? Did I even going after a certain desire because you think you want it? I think with Venus being retrograde squaring Jupiter is like, is that even what I want? Is that even what I truly value at the end of the day? Is it all just glitz and glamour, or is this truly something valuable to me? And there's a level of, I just think with Venus squaring Jupiter, especially while Jupiter's in Venus' sign, it's just really like, what do I want and what are my desires? And I think with Venus being Venus being direct squaring Jupiter is really like, oh, I want to pursue this thing, but does it match up with my, long-term plans? Is this something I really believe in? And I think Venus retrograde squaring Jupiter is like, I don't know if I even wanted that in the first place. Like, what do I want out of it? You know what I mean? And that's not, and this is what's fun about astrology is that like, you're not going to figure this shit out overnight. You're not going to figure out your whole life overnight, but at least astrology gives you this timeline and this map and almost like a journalistic process of, when I say journalistic, I mean like journaling, like a diary entry of like, this is the roadway. This is the path to going through that process of understanding yourself. But then also on Tuesday, Mars is going to go opposite Neptune. And I think that happens later on in the evening. And as Mars goes opposite Neptune, while Mars in Virgo wants to be very surgical, it wants to have a plan. Mars in Virgo, like, it's almost like getting like frustrated when things aren't in order. Mars opposite Neptune is like, are you even, for example, if you do inventory, it's if you have a business and you're doing inventory, if you get one of those numbers wrong, or if you don't see something, all your shit can just get fucked up. Like Mars opposite Neptune, I really think is like, are you looking at the situation clearly? Do you have all of the evidence and all of the information that you need to make a clear assessment or a clear judgment or have a clear action plan? And the reason I think that is the case with this Mars opposite Neptune is Mars is in Virgo. Mercury is ruled by Virgo. Mercury is in shadow and it stations retrograde tomorrow on Wednesday. So there's a level of being like, do I even have all of the right information to be making this assessment? Do I even have all, like, if you want to get your ducks in order, if you want to get your ducks in a row, it's like, do I even know how many ducks I have? Do I even know where I'm going to be putting these ducks? And so then we get to Sunday, and on Sunday, the sun will ingress into Virgo. So now we go into Virgo season. Tuesday was the last day of Leo season. I like to think of Virgo season as just like back to school season. It's like, you go and get your notebooks and your pencils and your backpack. There's something so like fun about that. Like, I feel like every one of my followers, like, isn't there just something so fun about going to like Staples, not Office Depot? I don't know if you've been to an Office Depot lately, but it is. I don't know what the fuck is going on with Office Depot. That is the most depressing place of a business I've been to in a long time. It's so weird. But it's like you go into a Staples and you just feel like you get organized stuff and it just makes you feel like your life is put together. It's like that false equivalency. It's that like, oh, I feel like I have all my life is together because I have more tools to organize things with, even though you're not even using them to organize stuff. That's Virgo season to me. But on Wednesday, the moon is going to sextile Mercury and it's going to go opposite Uranus, and then it's going to sextile Mars. So the moon is kind of doing some interesting things here. Now, the thing is, the moon, I believe, makes the sextile to Mercury before Mercury goes retrograde. And I think this is kind of an important timing thing because if the moon's in Scorpio, right? And again, we're digging deep down. We're very invested in our emotions, and it sextiles Mercury. It's like the want and the need, not just to be right, but to like hang on and attach to something that we have an emotion to. And the moon sextiles Mercury, where it's like, oh, I'm right. But then Mercury stations retrograde, where you kind of go like, it's kind of like when you go deep down enough and you realize you're wrong. And we have all done that before, but we also all struggle with that because our minds, we create an environment in which we are right. You know what I mean? There's no like, the ego is so strong, and I don't care how much spiritual work you do. The ego is so, unless you're straight up like a monk that literally just does this all day, every day, and is probably not watching my YouTube videos. We make these, it's the same thing with limiting beliefs. Like, this is why I talk about like the victim mindset stuff a lot, is you are constantly making, your perceptions of the world are constantly making you right. And this is why I asked, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because sometimes in order to be happy, you're going to end up being wrong. There's something I kind of want to go on a tangent about, but I'm not going to. I'm doing some self-control here. But I think as Mercury stations retrograde, as the moon sextiles, there's kind of this realization of like, maybe I have been doing things wrong. Maybe that isn't the answer. Maybe I have to change my plan. The moon will then go opposite Uranus on Wednesday. There's upheaval. There's, it is going to throw your plans in array. It is going to destabilize things. But then the moon sextiles Mars, and it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Just sit there? It's like, you have to put things together. And it's a sextile. It's not like all of a sudden you muster up all this willpower and energy to get your life all organized in a way that's better now. It's just a sextile where it's like, all right, this is all over the place, and I wasn't expecting that. What can I do to just get things organized right now? And Wednesday, again, Mercury stations retrograde. And I've said this before, but I'm looking forward to this Mercury retrograde. What are the bad things about Mercury retrograde? Yes, there's going to be delays. Yes, there's going to be miscommunications that have already probably had some context given here because Mercury's been in shadow. We're maybe going to go back on the things that we've said. We're probably going to change the plans that we thought were in concrete. But that's not always a bad thing. Mercury is going to sometimes it's better to it's just going over a draft again. Like if you're writing a paper, there's a reason why you do a second draft, is because that first draft is not going to be the best one. And while you might think it's like, you finished writing a paper, you're like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And then you reread it and you go, fuck, like that was, I need to totally change this. I do that all the time with my music. That's why it's taking so long to get out. But Mercury stations retrograde. This is the time, and I've been using this analogy for the Mercury retrograde, reevaluating our logistics, understanding what our plan is, understanding the information that we're working with. And as Mercury does station, there's a level of reviewing that. There's a level of reflecting on that. And it's a process. It's just that on Wednesday, our mindset shifts on that. And I believe it's the moon in Scorpio and also the sun going into Virgo enabling that, where it's like, if we really go down and deep into it and we go, oh, there's a problem here. So then we get to Thursday. And on Thursday, the moon is going to ingress into Sagittarius, and then it's going to square Saturn. And it's not bad. Well, okay. How about this? Because I get frustrated. It's seeing how many comments of people being like, this is the worst thing ever. Like, for example, if you're stuck in traffic, let's say you're running late for something, and then all of a sudden you get stuck in traffic. It's super easy to go, of course, why me? This always happens to me, of course. Right when I do this, it's super easy because, again, your brain's trying to make everything right. And you have this belief in your head that everything must be bad for you and that everything must go wrong for you. And you just reiterate that belief. And it doesn't help you. It doesn't serve you. If you want to sit here and ride off Thursday or this week or even next week or this whole month that it's just bad astrology, you are more than allowed to do that. But you are going to go nowhere, and you're going to continue to be miserable. The moon's going to go into Sag and square Saturn. There is a level of going nowhere fast, and there is a level of wanting to explore, wanting to create, wanting to see what the vision is, but it's squaring Saturn. There's a block there. And I think what's interesting is going from Wednesday's like super deep astrology, the Mercury retrograde going into Thursday, where it's kind of like, all right, what are our options? Where are we going to go from here next? The moon squaring Saturn, where it's like, you're not going to have the solution to that. There is going to be some breaks. There are going to be some walls. It's like, okay, let's say, I can think of a few different analogies for this, but I don't think I want to say them because they're not as good as I want them to be. But I look at the moon squaring Saturn as especially just in Sag and Pisces, it's like, again, no matter where you go, there you are. It doesn't matter. You can't run away from all of your problems. It's not going to be solved at the next place. It's not going to be solved going somewhere else. And while we can dream, while we can be creative, and we can hope and desire and wish for, what's over the horizon, which I believe is a very good part about life and human nature, because that's kind of the whole idea of Sagittarius. The moon's there, so it's our emotions that are really invested into that vision, and it's square Saturn, where there's some internal block there. There's some wall that you can't get past. And part of me is kind of like, okay, well, if you do have this creative vision and you do want to go over the horizon, how much of your own internal belief is keeping you from going? How much of your own limitations and the problems that, life's given you that you're justifying as reasons as to why you can't achieve anything or why you can't go for the things that you want? And that's like what Thursday is there's a level of frustration and block there. And I think the way out of that is, like, this is what's fun about Saturn and Pisces, is like, these aren't fixed walls. These aren't concrete walls. These are almost imaginary. These depend, like, again, I call Pisces the truest water sign. It could be solid, liquid, or gas, water. And Saturn's there, so it's easy for these liquid walls to become ice and to become solid. How do we relinquish those walls? How do we take those down? And I believe it comes internally. And what I think is funny about Thursday is the moon is going to make a trine to Pluto. There's something along the lines of like just really mustering all of our power and strength to like just go for something. And there's a good part and a bad part to it. I would argue it's mostly good. It's a trine, but it's Mars Pluto. Like, it can get really, dicey really fast. With a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, that sort of a thing. And I just look at Mars and Virgo trining Pluto and Capricorn is just kind of like, hey, there is a way. If there is a will, there is a way. And I believe the will is very strong. The fight is very strong on Thursday. Where I think the bad can come in is just using that as, again, justification as to why, like Mars is fights and conflicts, and that's going to get empowered by Pluto, where it's kind of like, if you're like, oh, here's all of these, problems, it's just going to feel very overwhelming and very frustrating. But it's kind of like, and everyone that says, oh, I need to stop saying like, how about you make YouTube videos and you actually speak into a camera authentically and being able to speak fluently? I'm going to use and I have actually worked on that. You should go watch my old videos. I used to suck at communicating, and it's something I'm working on, but everyone's be like, you got to stop saying like, you got to stop saying like. How about you make a YouTube video and you tell me how easy it is to not use words that are going to help you continue a flow. As you can tell, I'm a little fucking anal right now about some shit. Maybe it's because it's all the Mars and Virgo stuff. But the Mars trine Pluto is, it's very forceful in terms of like just absolutely mustering through all of the issues and all of the problems. It's like, if you've ever been a student, and if you were like me, where there's you have an essay due the night before, and so you just do it. Like, that's Mars trine Pluto in Virgo. It's like, I've got to get this done right now, and there's no other way around it. So that's how I look at Thursday. So then on Friday, the moon is then going to make a trine to Venus and square Mercury. I think this is fun because I think as the moon's in Sagittarius, and now that we've kind of not overcome, but Thursday is really the day of like seeing all of the blocks and like just busting through it anyway. Friday, while the moon's in Sagittarius, and again, we're looking at that outward vision. We're looking at like, what are we hopeful for? What do we want to create? Moon trines Venus. Venus already squared Jupiter. Venus is still retrograde. Now that we have an opportunity to change things, Mercury retrograde, and now that we have undergone this value shift, now we have an opportunity to create something that we actually want. So I look at the moon, it's like with Venus retrograde squaring Jupiter, it's like, did I even want that to begin with? And then you realize things have to change. And then the moon makes this trine to Venus where it's like, oh, now I have an opportunity to create a circumstance in which I want, something that I actually value and desire. And that's fun. It will square Mercury though. As someone like, I've been working on a lot of music videos. Like, I've got one video Parker's editing. I'm shooting one video this week, and then the beginning of September, I'm shooting another music video. I have all of these ideas of things that I want to do. And then when it actually comes to logistics and planning it, it's kind of like, that's going to be fucking super complicated to do. So I look at the moon and Sag squaring Mercury retrograde. It's like, okay, well, that might be fun. What is a compromise, or what can you do? Even if you don't have the logistics to meet that, if that makes sense, or if you don't really have the plan to do that or the resources to do that. That's how I look at the moon squaring Mercury on Friday, is wanting, like, you have this vision and it's really grand and you should try your hardest to get that, but also given your resources, circumstances, time, and logistics, like, you may not have all of those options available to you. And then we get to Saturday, and on Saturday, the moon will make a square to Neptune and then Mars, and then it will ingress into Capricorn and sextile Saturn. So the moon making a square to Neptune is just, every time I look at the moon and Sag squaring Neptune and Pisces, is being overwhelmed with all of the possibilities and being like, I want to go and do this and I want to go do that, but what does it mean if I get there? And what's going to happen, here? And just feeling like, I would say analysis. Well, I typically wouldn't say analysis paralysis for the moon making a square to Neptune, but then the moon, it makes a square to Mars, where it is analysis paralysis. It is like, well, if I want to do this and I've got this thing to do and this thing to do and this thing to do and this thing to do, there's a lot of frustration and maybe not knowing exactly what to do next or or how to prioritize. So I'd really ask on Saturdays, like, really think of some sort of a prioritization game plan. Like, you are not going to check everything off your box on Saturday, but what are the things that you can do and that you do have the energy for right now that you can at least tick off your box to make you feel better? The moon moves into Capricorn and then sextile Saturn. So again, there's a level of detaching from our emotions and just focusing on like, hey, like, and again, this is why I said this when I opened up this video, is I do this shit for me because I need to be reminded. Like, I am not sitting here telling you like from a pedestal that I'm perfect. I'm like, this is all shit I've got to do. And because, well, and that's what's fun about it to me, is like, I could sit here and look at the weekly astrology and be like, yeah, I can't be full of my own shit anymore. I gotta, with the moon going into Capricorn, there's a level of you gotta detach and just get something done, and you are going to feel better. You have to do something I've heard for quite a while, but it's like it really clicked with me recently. Is like you have to do the things that you can't. Sure, do the things that you can, but do the things that you can't do. Do the things that you think are so insurmountable that you can't do it. Do those things. That will give you the confidence. That will give you the ability to. I think as the moon moves into Capricorn, there's a level of detaching from the outcome and just focusing on the work. Just getting your hands busy, like I've said. And the moon sextiles Saturn. That might create some internal peace. That might create some internal maturity and discipline in terms of like, hey, I know I can see this vision through if I just keep consistent and I don't have to attach myself to the outcome. I just have to attach myself to the work. And then we get into Sunday, and Sunday's got a lot of astrology going on. Number one, the sun is going to go opposite Saturn. So the sun's in Virgo, Saturn's in Pisces. And again, sun's in Virgo. We're in back to school season. It's like, oh, like your willpower, your energy is very invested in like, I'm going to get this done. This is what I'm going to do for the last half of the year. And this is how I'm going to get ready for next year and organize, detail, plan. But then it goes opposite Saturn and Pisces. And again, I've talked a lot about this with Mercury in Virgo with the Saturn and Pisces stuff. Is like, what are you planning for? If you are going to school for architecture, what are the tools that you need? Or maybe you're going back to school, but you don't know what you're going to school for. So you don't really know what tools that you need. And I look at the sun opposite Saturn is like, if the sun is like the being of light and Saturn is the planet of darkness, the sun is like illuminating an area. It's like, I just need to point all my energy right here of like, what am I not seeing? And again, at Saturn and Pisces, I think a lot of it is, it does it like all the Virgo stuff is all very logical, rationale, very like, oh, well, like I need to see your sources and this and this and that, versus Pisces is a little bit more like, you know, all things are true and nothing is true. And, you know, anything is possible and nothing is possible. It's sort of that thing. And I think as Saturn's in Pisces and there is a wall that we're hitting with that, I think the sun in Virgo looking opposite is like really resisting that, being like, no, if I just plan and organize and detail more, I could do more. And I think that will help, but I also think it comes from the internal work. And Saturn's still retrograde. And Saturn's getting ready to station direct in November. So we only have we're almost at September. So we only have 2 months till Saturn stations direct. Doing that internal work of saying, what are the blocks that I have, and turning those blocks into virtues of like, oh, I have this internal belief that I can't do X, Y, and Z. And how do you turn that into a virtue? How do you turn that? How do you discipline yourself of like, hey, well, I might have this internal belief that stops me, I'm actually going to still do it anyway. I'm still going to attempt to do it anyway. I'm still going to try. Then on Sunday, Mars enters Libra. I mean, this is kind of something that we're going to talk much, much more about in the coming weeks, because we'll have the eclipses in Libra and Aries, and they're ruled by Mars in Libra. And Mars in Libra will conjoin the South Node. And so we'll talk a lot more about it. But Mars in Libra, the fight goes away. Mars in Libra is going to feel like giving up. And that's going to suck. There is going to feel... I'll put it to you this way. There are times where I want to fight. Like I have Mars. If you want to talk about bad things in my chart, I have Mars on my descendant. Don't even get me started on all the injuries, all the times I've been attacked, all my relationship issues. Don't even get me started on that. In a day chart, it's like smack on my descendant. There's times where I want to fight, but I know that it's not going to go anywhere or do anything. And it's not, for example, I like to think of Mars in Libra as like a criminal in a courthouse, in a trial. You acting emotionally and fighting against it isn't going to do anything. The way to fight is to be like well-dressed, respectful, quiet, let your lawyer do the talking. That's how you fight these battles. And that's how I look at Mars in Libra as like, there's a level of surrendering that comes with the battle. There's a level of, and it's not necessarily giving up. It's going to feel like that, but it's knowing what battle knowing what fighting tactics for what battle, right? Not every battle is a physical one that requires, weapons. Some battles are psychological. I think of Mars and Libra too as what animal does that? There's like an animal, it's not a coyote that or for example, a possum plays dead in order to fend off their attacker. Like that almost seems like Mars and Libra to me is very kind of giving up or surrendering and acting as if you're not fighting in order to win the fight, if that makes sense. That's how I look at Mars and Libra. But then also on Sunday, the moon will make a trine to Jupiter. It will trine Mercury and it will trine Uranus. So I think as Mars is in Libra and now we're in a different battlefield in that our energy and our fight and our willpower, our direct energy is not going to be increased. It's going to be decreased. We're going to be a little bit low in energy. The moon, though, while it's in Capricorn, trines Jupiter, trines Mercury, trines Uranus. There's a lot of clicking that comes into place on Sunday. Oh, I can just do this and I can do that. And I'm doing this and I'm doing that. So it's kind of a weird mix on Sunday's astrology, because there's a really good part of it that is productive, but then there's also a part of it that's that's weakening. And so I guess we'll just cross that bridge as we get there, and I'll be curious to know what you guys felt about Sunday. But that brings us to next week. Next week, we have the full moon in Pisces. We have Uranus stationing retrograde. We have Venus stationing direct, and Venus stations direct on the evening of the picnic/potluck. Make sure you guys come to the picnic. It's going to be a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun last year. It starts at 12. Yeah, I'm just excited to see you guys in person, hang out, get to know other people that are into astrology, make some friends. It's just nice to be with other people. Something I don't like about formal astrology meetups is that it's all focused on astrology, when it's I feel like everyone, we have enough astrology content, we have enough books to learn about it. It's but just getting to know other people that are also into it. And then maybe, you meet someone who's also into astrology, but maybe they're also into another niche thing that you're into, and then you can connect and make friends. That's what this is all about. So I'm really excited for this. And it's also in Venus Stations Direct. Parker, make sure you plug this in the beginning too. I don't remember if I said said anything about the picnic at the beginning of this video, but make sure you guys come. It's going to be a lot of fun. And let me know in the comments too. Even if you've never commented before, I just want to know who's coming. A lot of people will be like, oh, I'm, in a different state or something like that, and that they can't come. But I want to know who's coming in the comments. Let me know. And yeah, with that being said, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next week.